And why do you want to kill me?
I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you? Go back to ripping off mob dealers? No. No, you complete me.
You're garbage who kills for money.
Don't talk like one of them. You're not. Even if you'd like to be. To them, you're just a freak. Like me. They need you right now. But when they don't, they'll cast you out. Like a leper. See, their morals, their code. It's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. They're only as good as the world allows them to be. I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
It's a fascinating phenomenon. The way in Hollywood movies, they'll have the villain sometimes say some of the most profound words in the entire movie. Heath Ledger's performance here as the Joker, I think it's amazing. It's so profound the way he can convey how the masses, mainstream society, the people in our lives in general, the way they let the individual down, the person feels betrayed. Why? Because of these people's general hypocrisy, their immorality, their unreliability, these sort of things that I think we can all relate to at some point. Every one of us at some point can put ourselves in the Joker's shoes here. Hoping YouTube, out of all the platforms, will allow me to even show that clip, but it'll be on there one way or another. And so with that, we're going to go right into episode 139. Deregulation. Sometimes the villain does the right thing. That's the title. So thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Konrad Rogoz. Today is Saturday, August 2nd, 2025, which means it's on the calendar, it's the second day of the 1944 Warsaw Uprising. 81 years ago. Yes, I know, 81 years ago, but I commemorate it every year from August 1st to October 2nd. 63 days the uprising lasted. It's, for me, I consider it my Independence Day. It's the only historical anniversary that I find myself going to. It's like it's the only thing that happened historically that makes sense to me, that I find inspiring. I love it with my entire heart, so that's why I say that. And while, yes, now with that title in mind, of course, Donald Trump is the villain in the scenario, sure, but that's not what I mean by the villain. Donald Trump is not my villain. It's not that the bad guy is Trump. The government as a whole is the bad guy. But there's a hero-villain dynamic I want to get into here. And the hero-villain dynamic is this. It's very simple. It's the common man versus the system. This is our eternal, perennial hero and villain story. Now, the reason for that is because everyone who isn't a dedicated believer in the state, which it's a sizable minority, but there are a lot of people that there are believers in the state, like religious believers that the government is doing the right thing no matter who it is. There are a lot of people who give a state leader that kind of good faith, but it's not the majority. The majority of people have some sort of a skepticism when it comes to that. While they do vote, they do support, they do discuss, they also do recognize under their skin that officials and politicians, they take advantage of the people. So then by default, the president of a country represents the system in power, which means he's the villain. Now the people inside of the country, us, that's the hero. Now of course everybody's a hero in their own story, I know. But in general, the common man that just lives their life, that's the hero, right? And of course the people ruling over them are the villains. So if people saw the world clearly, they would look out for their own interests. And to a bright mind with the eyes to see clearly, they would relatively quickly recognize that the interests of you align with the interests of me, and both of our interests align with the interests of our neighbor. And while those will differ slightly, or even significantly differ when we're talking about somebody like 900 miles away, totally different part of the world, like our interests might conflict, but those interests would still align to a surprisingly larger extent. we have way more in common than we have differences. The common man in general has common interests. That's the thing about us. Like we're common. We're generally easy. And I don't mean just men, because this is true for men, but we're talking about the common man and woman here. I'm talking about people in general. The common man, he doesn't ask for a perfect world. He doesn't ask for grand and incredible things. Sadly, because the common man and woman generally doesn't even conceive of incredible things, so they wouldn't even know what to ask for. Most people don't think greatness possible in their life, or that huge, unbelievable change could happen. So they don't really expect it. While everyone wishes they won the lottery, no one realistically expects that to happen to them. No one is entitled for that to happen to them. And really, if the average person did win the lottery, they wouldn't know what to do with it. They'd give it right back. But the common man does have interest in things that they expect and want from society. And what the common man asks for is peace from the villain. To be free from daily villainy and villain activities. Or scumbaggery, as my friend Vinny Eastwood would say, right? Cheers to my friend Vinny Eastwood. Just being free from the villain, getting a break from villain activity. Now, who's the villain in society? Well, the common man, he actually has a villain above and a villain below them. Villain above them, villain below them. The villain above them occasionally steals from the people and generally terrorizes them occasionally with taxes, with licensing requirements, property code compliance. All of your property, you have to follow all the laws that have to do with that property, all under the threat of arrest, which is always looming if you don't follow procedures, right? Generally, you don't think about your daily life going badly and ending with an arrest, but that's because you followed the rules. If you didn't follow the rules, then you'd be arrested quite quickly. That's the villain above. It's the government. Now, the villain below also occasionally steals from the people and generally terrorizes them occasionally. And that's actual theft, like the risk of getting robbed on the street, a general lack of respect for property, right? We're talking about like life in the ghetto, you know, generally the person's, why should they care about what, you know, they generally live in a bad state, so there's nothing stopping them from hurting you. They don't have that much to lose. Let's see, in that kind of a low villainous environment, you have loud noise, bad hygiene, right? The streets are not cleaned, all of this stuff. And then there's the threat of violence at any time. So it's not the threat of arrest, but similar, it's the threat of violence. Nobody's walking around with handcuffs, but they might rob you or beat you up, right? So the low-level villains, people rarely support them. There are not that many people who sympathize with the general ghetto gang member, risk taker. I used to be one of these people. You play me like a video from some kind of a chase or police footage, I will, even though I try not to, I'm gonna find myself rooting for the criminal usually, just because of I don't know, the way I grew up, I guess. But people rarely support them on a mass scale. But with the high-level villains, it's different. You have the political party phenomena, where that clarity of sight, that clarity that, oh, these are bad people, they don't do good things, maybe I shouldn't support them. Like we get that about gang members and people like that. But that clarity is lost when it comes to the passion and fervor that people support a president with. People support their political party. Now, the way a president gets this support and this passion from the people, the way he does it is always the same. He never goes up there in front of the people and just says it like it is. Imagine if someone said, I'm going to do the bidding of my sponsors, I represent the villain faction, I'm a villain through and through, and I'm going to continue to serve the interests of the people that you have all been wanting a change from. If they said that, of course, no one would vote for them. So they don't say that. Instead, what they always do is one of two things. Number one is they portray themselves as the common man. Remember that they're representing the villains, but they need to come across as a hero. So the common man has to relate to them. So these politicians, they're going to present themselves as the common man, like a normal guy who's an outsider. imagine a normal guy. He somehow made his way through the political minefield and got himself into a political leadership position, and now he's going to fight against the system, right? That's one. And the second way that they do it is by portraying themselves as fighting for and working for the interests of the common man, but very clearly not an outsider. Every bit an insider. Definitely a politician. But one who understands the common man's plight better, one who is more loyal for whatever reason, more loyal to the common man's interests as opposed to the interests of the system that you would expect from a politician. Now, Ronald Reagan would be an example of the first one. That's your common man. Ronald Reagan was the common man, or symbolized as one. He wasn't born into wealth, right? He wasn't really a politician. People knew him as an actor, and knowing him, having them on their TV screens, they thought they could trust him. Okay, they saw him there for a long time. Ronald Reagan was definitely portrayed as that common man, right? For American families and all that. For the little man, they even said. Now, then you have John F. Kennedy. That's a perfect example of the second one, who's definitely not an outsider, but people trusted him for whatever reason. JFK was the son of a politician. He was from a rich family. He was bred and raised and put into the position that he was placed into. But regardless of all that, of his background, through his energy and through his charisma, somehow he was able to convince people that he represented the common man anyway. And he did that even after his death. He represented everything that was good about the human being to many people just because of the way he looked. It was all through the image and the way he spoke. Now, we're talking about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is curious. It's a curious one because he's both, actually. Not only just because he's a TV personality, so he's got the Ronald Reagan thing, on top of several similarities between him and Reagan. There are many. I talked about that before in an episode I did, but also because in his original 2016 campaign, ever since then, he ran on opposing the deep state. That's the reason the people supported him. He reeled in all of the people that were fed up with the system, and he called out the villains, some of them, like the Clintons. And that's a big deal because they're not just the Clintons are not just political puppets. They are big political players, kind of like the Bush family, right? They have some continuity there. They have some pull there. I'm not really deep on the individual politicians and who's in what secret society, but it's fair to say that was a big deal, him calling out Hillary and Bill Clinton. Now, Donald Trump at this point, he loosely aligned with the Truth and Freedom movement, so he sounded like he was with us. The conspiracy movement, Ron Paul, and the Fed. Drain the swamp, right? That it was all about him being an outsider. Politically, at least, he presented as an outsider. So there's that. That's him playing the common man. However, at the same time, he is a billionaire. Everyone knows he's a billionaire. He's been one for years. And with that alone, he cannot be an outsider. And everybody knows it, but people have shielded their eyes to that reality because there's no way to avoid that he has had amicable relationships with Jeffrey Epstein, with Bill Gates, and Larry Ellison. But still, that hasn't stopped a good portion of this country from supporting him with that passion. And that's just like JFK. Just like JFK's background didn't stop people from supporting Kennedy. Even though there was no indication looking at his background that anything was going to change. It's just the way he talked. So Donald Trump's got both going on. Now that took me a while to talk about, but I really wanted to lay out that true hero-villain dynamic. To say that Donald Trump is a villain in hero's clothing. But he's not the first one, and he won't be the last. I always go back to that. I always have to make sure people remember. I'm not getting caught in the weeds here talking about the day-to-day things, but this is This Week in Tyranny. We do talk about the day-to-day things, but we take it back to principle. We talk about philosophy, and we talk about having real weapons to counter the weapons that we are hit with. Now, this week was an instance of just that. It's when a villain tells the truth. When a villain is on the right side of something in principle. it doesn't mean he's not the villain anymore. It doesn't mean he's changed. This is not like in Star Wars when Darth Vader turned on Palpatine and he grabbed Palpatine and saved Luke Skywalker. He saved his son, and then Darth Vader redeemed himself. See, that is an example of a villain redeeming himself. My favorite kind of story, the redemption story. That's not what this is here. No, but Donald Trump's stance on climate change and deregulation, on carbon emissions and the EPA, it's not a redemption story. It doesn't have to be one. We don't have to fall into that. It's not turning over a new leaf. It's just an instance of him being on the right side of a question in principle. And when someone's on the right side of something in principle, we need to comment on that. We need to be loud and upfront about that. Because this isn't a popularity contest. This isn't how you feel about me, the person. It's about the principles that I'm putting forward, that you're putting forward, and what you resonate with and align with, sticking to that. Because people are going to change day by day. I was sick as hell last week. I was a lot different of a person than I am this week. What you really have to count on is your principles that do not change. So let's get into what happened, right? This week, President Donald Trump's administration on Tuesday proposed revoking a scientific finding that has long been the central basis for U.S. action to regulate greenhouse gas emissions and fight climate change. So, what happened is they want to do away with this legal finding, and based on that legal finding, they were pushing through all of this climate change laws. We'll talk about what the finding is. But just so everybody's clear on that nothing has happened yet. They're talking about doing it, but it's a clear rhetorical and ideological counter going against the idea that let's get right into that. The proposed Environmental Protection Agency rule that they're talking about doing away with would rescind a 2009 declaration that determined that carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases endanger public health and welfare. That is the thing that they're going to take away and rescind. It's a declaration that determines that carbon dioxide, so this, and other greenhouse gases, so combustion engine stuff, that endangers public health and welfare. So that is the legal precedent that they've set, that this is actually something harmful, and whenever you could set up that something is harmful, that is when you can get the handcuffs out. That is when you can get the police coming to your door, okay? That is how, for any other reason, I'm free from having people run in my house. But as soon as it is established that I may be a danger to the public health and welfare, then it's justified, at least in the way we do things, that someone can kick down my door and take me away. That's why this is important, okay? That's why my choppy introduction is there, so everybody understands what's going on here. It's called the endangerment finding. That it's endangerment. It's causing danger if you are... The carbon emissions in principle are causing danger. Now I'm sticking to that because in principle that means that human beings are a danger inherently. Because anything that human beings do, just a level of activity you can measure with carbon dioxide. That's the level of activity. You can measure it that way because that is a natural waste product of human life, even just breathing out. Now, of course, they're not talking about us breathing. They're talking about our engines, the car engines. The endangerment finding is the legal underpinning of a host of climate regulations under the Clean Air Act for motor vehicles, power plants, and other pollution sources that are heating the planet. Repealing the finding will be the largest deregulatory action in the history of America, the EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin said on Tuesday. So, the endangerment finding is and was absolutely disgusting. It should have never happened, but it was nothing new. It's the same argument as national security, common good, and vaccine morality. A term maybe we haven't heard, but once I explain it, you know what it is. You may already know what it is. Now, national security is basically saying what? That if you don't support your government and military, then you're helping those terrorists out there. If you don't support your soldiers, it's like you're killing them. That is the national security argument. If you're holding some information that can be a danger to the US military, then you don't have rights anymore, because we need to do what's necessary for national security. Okay. Then the next one is common good, which is almost the same thing, but it's not really on a national scale, it's on a societal scale. It's like, if you're not with us, then you're against us. You have to choose a side. You have to do it for the good of everybody. Okay, it doesn't matter if you have a right to something, if it's yours, but if everybody else around you has decided that they need you to do something, then it's for the common good, right? That is the next argument. And vaccine morality is the argument that if you don't get a vaccine, then you're endangering the rest of society. They told us this during the pandemic. They continue to tell us this. And this is the same as the endangerment fighting. Now, these are all wrong. You are not causing harm to anyone else if you don't vote. You're not causing harm to anyone else if you don't support some sort of a social movement. And you're not causing anyone harm if you don't get vaccinated. And it also does not cause harm to anyone for you to drive a big-ass pickup truck that gets 6 miles a gallon. Yes, combustion smoke is unhealthy, obviously. But so is a child falling, trying to walk, or trying to maybe climb a tree. That could be harmful to them, but you don't put your child in a bubble. You're not supposed to, at least. You're supposed to expose them to some risk of harm in order for them to actually grow up and be independent. And this is where we are cosmically in our evolutionary stages as human beings, as a human family. We're in the adolescent stage, in the hydrocarbon combustion engine paradigm. We will develop true clean energy one day, but it has to be with moral and economic justice, meaning it can't be done by government propaganda, private public partnerships, roundabout lobbying, or some United Nations proclamations. Either it'll be a free choice, or it's no choice at all. Simple. Enough said about that. Well, back to reading about what happened. There are people who, in the name of climate change, are willing to bankrupt the country. This is Lee Zeldin from the EPA. He said that on his Conservative Ruthless podcast. They created this endangerment finding, he says, and then they are able to put all these regulations on vehicles, on airplanes, on stationary sources to basically regulate out of existence, in many cases, a lot of segments of our economy, and it cost Americans a lot of money. The EPA proposal must go through a lengthy review process, including public comment, before it is finalized, likely next year. Environmental groups are likely to challenge the rule change in court. So, of course, it may be nothing, right? It may not go away at all. But it's beside the point, because we are talking about principle here. It's about the ideas here. The EPA also called for rescinding limits on tailpipe emissions that were designed to encourage automakers to build and sell more electric vehicles. This is what I like. This is what I think matters. It is, these emission tests that people do, and tailpipe emissions in general. Just because you're removing some really unhealthy stuff, the low elements, like low-level villainy, right? Doesn't mean this isn't wrong in principle. And it is wrong in principle to charge all these fees and all the $170 now for a sticker. It costs like $800 to register a car. This is ridiculous. This is about a week's worth of labor, Now, me personally, I think we should be running by now on hydro-powered cars. I think it's possible. I think it should have been done already. I'm not saying that breathing in exhaust smoke is the epitome of health and freedom, right? I'm not one of these pickup truck and barbecue guys. But I operate according to the laissez-faire principle of health, safety, and technology. The laissez-faire principle is basically this. It's up to each individual to choose when they want to go with the cleaner and safer option over the cheaper and easier option. Because that's always how it is. That's always the dilemma. This is what is cheap. This is what is immediate. This is what is easy. But if you want what is safe, what is clean, what is long-lasting, it's going to cost you more. It's going to be harder to implement. And not everybody chooses the same thing. And we will move towards the cleaner and easier options, and they become more cost effective over time. They become more efficient over time. We will get to that point, without any public incentives naturally. And naturally, that's always going to occur in a bell curve pattern. And that's when you know something is natural. It's got a bell curve to it. So first, the people who are going to go with the clean, safe option is going to be the people who can afford it. The rich, the open-minded, the ones who are a little bit quirky and crazy, they're going to do it first. And then slowly, it's going to start reaching a higher and higher number of people until it affects the entire majority. Just like, when the computer came out, who got the computer first? Or how did the Industrial Revolution start affecting society? It always happens the same way, and then naturally over time, once most people have it, then very slowly the lower levels or the less fortunate levels of society, it finally permeates even to them, and that is how the progress occurs. So I'm not against electric vehicles. I'm against the agenda to force people into that dynamic. Instead of a bell curve pattern, they want to force you into it. Where in a dynamic where you can't just fill the trunk with gas cans and just fucking drive, because you could do that with a gas-powered car. A paradigm where you can't drive off-road, you can't handle extreme cold, and you can't withstand electronic interference. That's the electric vehicle paradigm as it is being pushed today. So that's why I'm pro-cash, that's why I'm pro-diesel engine, I'm pro-gas appliances, I'm pro-incandescent light bulbs, I'm pro owning as many chickens as you want, burning big fires in your backyard, all of that. Okay, owning pets, even though, a dog barking outside my window will definitely annoy me, but I'm not against any of these regulations, even if they don't benefit me personally. I still see it as being aligned with my interests, because even though it may cause me discomfort, my number one interest is to maintain choice and freedom and principles. Easy. So, cash, gas appliances, gasoline engines, incandescent light bulbs, and oil drilling, I don't think they're the pinnacle of human achievement. But I support all those things because forced progress isn't real. That doesn't exist. Life is voluntary by definition. It has to be voluntary. The moment someone does something against their will, the moment they're forced to do something, they experience death. That we've all experienced death at some point. We've all experienced that, doing something against our will. That's death. That's actually what it is. Now, we didn't die all the way, but that is death on a small scale. One day we will all experience full death, where our body will age, and while we want to do one thing, we are not able to do it. It'll be completely against our will, and that's the moment where we experience death. That's how I see it working. And so there may come a day where we open our mouth to breathe, and we want to breathe in oxygen and air, and we, against our will, are going to inhale carbon and methane and all these chemicals, and we may die because of that, right? So the climate change theory may be true. But if we succumb to this forced so-called progress through immoral ideologies such as the endangerment fighting, there will be certain death. There's going to be certain death there long before the million simulated deaths projected by all the climate computer models. And that's not just me being a fundamentalist, that's not just me being a hard ass, but principles underline anything good that happens in the world. It has to be good for real. It has to be good sustainably. This is the real sustainability. We want clean energy and all this stuff, but it has to be done the right way. Morally, first of all, morally and economically. And I say all that now after just last week doing an episode about the polluted air. So I don't avoid this, right? Just earlier this week, actually, was the epic wildfire smoke that I talked about in the coated Chicago. I didn't know it was coming. I guess I didn't predict that either, though. Dead clock is right twice a day, right? Now, I see the endangerment fighting as separate from overall air quality. I do think these are different things, because I think the air quality problem has less to do with emissions coming from the ground up less having to do with human activity, and has a lot more to do with the emissions from the sky falling towards the ground, if you know what I mean. That's, of course, geoengineering, which Donald Trump has not dared to touch, by the way. He won't touch it, quite the opposite. Because the military controls the skies, and there has always been an intimate overlap between the skies and wireless communication, internet, radio, satellites. So with all that, there's an AI technocracy overlap. We can argue about all this stuff we're doing on the ground, where really a lot of this is coming from above, from the skies. I don't mean from heaven, right? And stratospheric aerosol injection, and other reasons why particles may be remaining suspended in the air when they should be moving up into the atmosphere and away from us having to breathe it in. Now, those are separate conversations to have, right? All that being said, the endangerment finding was wrong in principle, and rescinding it is right in principle. So Donald Trump is right in principle here, okay? I know people get conflicted with some of the things that go on politically. There's no reason to be conflicted about this. Just stick to your principles. It doesn't matter if Trump said it or not. So when you hear someone say something, someone you trust say something absurd, or when you hear someone that you know you can't trust, but they say the truest thing you ever heard, take it easy. It's okay. They're not your God, You just happen to be on the right side for once. Even the shadiest and most pathetic person on earth could have a heroic moment. It doesn't mean they're your ally. They're not your friend. And you're the one you're supposed to be trusting anyway. Trust yourself over anyone. Thank you very much for spending time with me. Hope you enjoyed this week in Tyranny. I'll see you next week. And looking forward to Soundpath to Freedom. Soundpath.org. It's my new website. Bye.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. Is that clear? You think you merely stopped a business deal? That is not the case. The Arabs have taken billions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back. It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. You are an old man who thinks in terms of nations and peoples. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, Rins, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale?